So you know, over the years I've played many different flight simulators, and while doing so I've used a lot of different joysticks and Hotas setups. But you know, it wasn't until I switched to the T16000M from Thustmaster that I first experienced what a Hall effect sensor is, and after doing that, there's never a going back to like a normal old school joystick. And for the most part, I actually really like the T16000M Hotas setup. I used it consistently until I got the Thustmaster Warthog, but I didn't switch to the Warthog after receiving it because it was more expensive, or technically the next tier up in Thustmaster's lineup. In actuality, I much prefer the T16000M to like the Thustmaster for like casual gaming. It's cheaper to buy. It's lighter to take out and put away. I just kind of like it, but it has this really annoying design flaw, at least to me, that I dislike so much. That's the reason I stopped using it. That is until my Thustmaster Warthog here stopped working. I don't know what happened to it. One day the throttle just simply was not recognized by my PC. You plug in the USB, some lights light up, then they shut off. The computer says unrecognized USB device, and that's it. It doesn't work. Nothing I've tried has remedied the problem. From what little research I've done, it seems like it's a board problem. Something got a little fried, I guess, somehow. So this is dead. So now that I'm back using the TWCS throttle, we have to fix this little problem if it's going to be usable, at least to me. So my big beef with this Hotas is the throttle itself, specifically the sliding function. From the factory, this thing, it's not ideal. I like the idea of sliding over this rocker type setup. The problem with this one is, well, this plastic plate. This is the plastic plate that comes in this throttle from the factory. So basically the handle here mounts to the top of this, and this slides on two linear rails, or two basically guide rods, and this is just a plastic plate. It's plastic sliding on steel. Because of that, no matter what you do when you move this throttle up and down, especially when you do it slowly, it sticks just a little bit, just enough to make it so you can't get precise control, which is very annoying if you're playing something like DCS and you're doing air-to-air refueling or something like that, and you're trying to get those real small throttle adjustments. You just can't do it because it sticks and it sucks, and I hate it, and that's the reason I switched. But now we're back, so we got to fix it. But luckily for us, the fix is actually pretty easy. I did a little research and found that, hey, people are selling and making kits to upgrade this thing, and that's essentially what we're going to do today. We're going to make this throttle better than it's ever been. Better than this one, maybe. So what we need to do is get a new bearing plate, and instead of just using plastic on metal rods, we're going to use linear bearings. And the bearings you can get for this are actually really cheap, about 10 bucks on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description below. You don't have to change the rods. They fit right on the stock rods that come in it. But to use them, we need a new plate. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. So if you have a 3D printer, then no problem. You go to Thingiverse, I'll leave a link in the description below. There's a guy that's made one. You print it out, you put your bearings in it, profit. If you don't, you can find them for sale on Etsy. I'll leave a link in the description below, but last time I checked, they're out of stock. But you never know, maybe they're back by the time you guys see this. But once you have those items, all you gotta do is open up the TWCS throttle, remove this horrible plastic plate, and install the new bearings. Basically put the bearings in your new 3D printed plate, and then put that plate in your throttle. It's really that easy. It does seem a bit intimidating when you first open it up because there's control boards and linkages and stuff like that, but as long as you take your time, remember how you took everything apart, you should be fine, and trust me, it's worth it. Now, once everything's back together, before you go use your throttle again, I recommend going back in and recalibrating it. At least for me, when I put it back together, I noticed that I didn't have the exact same throw on my throttle. And the easiest way to do that is go to your start menu, type in game controllers. You see this setup USB game controllers. Find your TWCS throttle, go to properties, and once there, go to settings and click calibrate, and it'll walk you through the process to recalibrate all your axes. Once done, what you want to see is that when your throttle is in min throttle, this Z-axis is all the way up, and when you push your throttle all the way up, the bar goes all the way down. Now you can feel the bearings when you move it back and forth, so it's not like 100% buttery smooth, but the precision has been improved tenfold. I honestly think this throttle should come like this from the factory with these bearings installed to it, even if it just raises the price by 10 bucks. I mean, it's worth it. Personally, for myself, I feel that when it comes with this plastic plate, it almost makes it unusable. Now, if you're moving it back and forth quickly, maybe not a big deal, but if you want that precise control of your throttle movement, it just ain't gonna cut it. Luckily for us, It's a pretty easy fix, but we're not done yet. Another thing that I miss a lot about using the Thustmaster Warthog are all the buttons that are attached to the throttle, especially now that I play a lot of DCS and VR. Try finding a keyboard in VR. It's every time I put on the goggles, it's like somebody runs by, moves my keyboard, because I'm just like, I can't find it. And having these buttons on your throttle would be a godsend. But luckily for me, right as I was planning to upgrade this Hotas to get some better control, a company reached out to me by the name of BlackHog, and they were like, hey, we have a product that we want to send you over to try, and it was a perfect fit for my VR struggles. This is the B-Explorer, specifically the Model B from BlackHog, and essentially what it is a throttle mount. You put your throttle on here, and then you have all these dials and buttons and switches that you can now use. And it would actually look really good with this one, to tell you the truth. I'm pretty sure they actually designed it for this throttle because it just matches it so much better. But luckily for me, I can use it with the T16000M throttle. The Model B that I have right here comes equipped with 1 slider, 5 rotary axes, 3 three-way toggle switches, and 7 buttons. They even sell it with this nice little cell phone holder. I have the Samsung S10 Plus, and it does fit in there. I don't know what you'd use it for, but I guess if you had some sort of game that had maybe a telemetry app, you could put it right there, and it would work. Now the B-Explorer, the thing I have here, isn't the cheapest. It's 189 euros, or about 222 US dollars. But for that price, you get something that's very well made in Germany. And it feels like it's gonna last a long time. It doesn't feel cheap. All the switches feel nice. The rotary axes, they have like a good amount of resistance, and they hold the precision well, and they just feel really smooth. So all in all, it does feel like it's built really well. And the best part is you just plug it in and it works. There's a USB cable that goes in your computer. There's no goofy software that I had to download. I just plugged it in, opened DCS, and there it was, and I just started mapping my buttons to it. There was no fiddling around. And in VR, personally, this is where I think something like this shines. And like I said, I had a hard time trying to find my keyboard when I'm under the goggles, and then you always have to take the goggles off, which totally just, what's the point of playing in VR if you have to take your goggles off and on? But luckily with this thing and your controller mount right there, your hand is pretty much always on your joystick and your throttle, and then you can easily move from the throttle to the B-Explorer, move all the switches you need, and move it back to the throttle without having to take your goggles off, put them back on, and it just adds a whole new immersion factor to flight sims, which I really enjoy, and I've been having a lot of fun using it with this setup. So on a side note, after using this, I'm starting to understand why people build those really elaborate home simulator setups where they have a bunch of these panels all over the place. They have maybe a Thustmaster Warthog mounted in like an A10 cockpit they built. It just adds an immersion factor that doesn't exist when you're using a keyboard. You just have the throttle here, you're in the goggles, you got your joystick, and all you got to come up is just flip your button. Oh, I want the landing gear down, flaps down, refueling probe out, radar antenna up, down. It just adds something that I didn't think it would to the gaming experience. Oh, and they actually do sell a plastic bezel that can go over the top of these switches that you then can put these little stickers on them and label all your buttons. So rather than them saying L1 or B3, you can map them to how you like in a specific game, and then you could have a bezel that actually has them listed at what they are, so you don't have to, if you haven't played in a while, you don't have to jump into the key bindings page to try to figure out what you bound all your switches to back in the day. So if you're someone who has 189 euros to spend on upgrading your flight simulator setup, the B-Explorer is not really a bad choice. And I think you'll like it, because I do.